Hey everyone, I'm kind of crushed right now by this book. I'm going to do a book review today for the first of the special edition Give Yourself Goosebumps books, and that book is Into the Jaws of Doom. Now, I love Give Yourself Goosebumps books, and I have to say, Into the Jaws of Doom could very easily be one of the worst Goosebumps books I've ever read in my life. And very easily the worst Give Yourself Goosebumps book I've read so far. This is horrible. There's maybe a couple of small redeeming things. Well, one's pretty major because of being a villain, but we'll get there in a little bit. This story could have been so cool, and there are so many things that ruin this and genuinely make it not fun, and genuinely make it too difficult to keep up with, and we'll get more into that in a moment as well. But I was excited for this. It's a special edition book, and of course the special editions themselves of these Give Yourself Goosebumps books, which are basically choose your own adventure books, if you happen to not know that, if this happens to be your first video ever hearing about this, I really love the choose your own adventure style Give Yourself Goosebumps books. And if you don't understand what that means, basically you'll read a page and it'll give you two options or three options or four or five sometimes even of what page you need to turn to next to make the choice that you want to do to progress in the story. Now the thing with this book that's very different, the premise starts out with you are going on a science museum field trip with your class, and you go into one of the rooms that has like a video game. It's one of your favorite video games based off of your favorite movie. And basically a message comes up on the computer screen saying that the supercomputer has basically woken up and it's going to take over the world and it needs your help. This person needs your help that's contacting you. This person happens to be PDA. That's his name. As you talk to him throughout the story, you find that out. And throughout the story, he kind of guides you every once in a while when he can. Mostly the supercomputer, which is basically, the villain from Terminator. It takes over all the animatronics and robots and stuff inside of the building, and for the most part, that can be cool. That's like the only part of the entire story I actually like. But the elevator that you get into when you think all of this is a prank essentially traps you, and the elevator takes you all the way up the stairs, or all the way up to the very top of the building, basically, like the fourth floor of this building, and you kind of just have to work your way down. It's like the opposite of the Dread movie. Instead of working your way up to the top of the building to get to the main villain, it's not like that. You have to work your way all the way down through the building to get out of this place, and your class and everybody else have pretty much left already. You were just lagging behind because of wanting to play the video game, but now you're stuck on the elevator. You were put up on the fourth floor, the very final top floor of the building. And you have to, essentially the way this particular Give Yourself Goosebumps book is laid out, is that it very much heavily feels like a Silent Hill, Resident Evil type of thing. The old video games for PlayStation 1 and whatnot, where you have to go into rooms and find certain things and figure out certain things for yourself, with an inventory list in the front of the book and everything else. Of things you have to keep track of and tools that you've been given and stuff to be able to beat these puzzles. And not really even puzzles, they're more of just getting certain things in this area, then moving over to this area to utilize that item. So sort of a puzzle, but mostly like a video game more than anything. Kind of like with Silent Hill and Resident Evil, like I said. And it gets real tiresome because the formatting for this book is very different from other Give Yourself Goosebumps books. If you're not familiar with Give Yourself Goosebumps, you probably don't know this, but typically each page will be like page 1, page 2, page 3, and throughout the story you'll be told to go to page such and such versus page such and such for the options that you choose for progressing in the story, like I said, to eventually find many of the multiple endings. And I read through the entire books. I use like 7 different bookmarks. And this book is formatted in a way where they have like up to 2 options. Like right here you see it's 69, 70, 71, and 72. 2 per each page. So it immediately becomes complicated because if you're having a hard time trying to keep up on all the options, for example, the mirror maze that you enter at some point in the story, where you have to turn left a bunch of times and then turn right and take a bunch of steps this way, take a bunch of steps that way. You have so many bookmarks in here. I had to use a bag of little pieces of paper I take from work where I write down my story ideas and stuff that I get at work while I'm at my job. I had to write those things down on that, and I've been using those the last day or so to be able to keep track of where I am in the story, because there's so many options. And this is very different at the same time of compared to most Give Yourself Goosebumps books, if not all of them. I don't think any other book was ever formatted like this in the Give Yourself Goosebumps world, and thank God for that, by the way. Mainly because of how complicated and messy this is. I can't see how a kid could follow it that easily, because I'm having a hard time as an adult keeping up with it, trying to use multiple bookmarks to make sure I get every single option and every single ending. And I tried my best, and I did complete the story. I did get every single page read and everything. Took a very long time because of how complicated this is, and bookmarks kept wanting to fall out because of the quality of the particular copy that I have. That's a used copy that I got off Thrift Books on Amazon. And, you know, I would have things marked, and the bookmarks would want to fall out, which makes it more difficult. Like I said, it's hard to kind of really map out, because you can have more than one option set up on a page for where you need to go to next. It just becomes a giant mess. And the scenarios aren't even that great. Like, the whole idea of kind of having to escape from this science museum that has a lot of robotics in it, this crazy supercomputer thing, kind of like that robot computer thing. What is it called from Terminator? I cannot think off the top of my head of what it's called. I almost have it, because I'm thinking about Terminator Genesis. God, what is it? I cannot remember what it is. It doesn't matter, but you know what I mean. The crazy supercomputer thing that tries to take over all the technology and use the machines against the humans. That's basically what's happening here and what the computer's trying to do. Now, that premise scares me, because AI terrifies me. I'm terrified of artificial intelligence. I don't like that. I think it's a horrible, terrifying thing that's happening in society that could ruin our entire world and kill us. We're going to keep tinkering with it. It's probably going to destroy us before much longer. But getting along with the actual review after trying to figure out what it was called for so long. Skynet. That's what it is. Skynet. Skynet's what I'm trying to think of. I kept thinking Skynet becomes Genesis on such and such date, like in Genesis, what they kept saying there. In the film Genesis, not the Bible book Genesis. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is a very rambly review because I'm very frustrated and I want to talk about anything else but this horrible book. Like I said, you're going through a science museum. You have a lot of different things. You could go into an area on the top floor that might be more about robotics. Work your way down. You get to stuff like dinosaur bone creature things. It's not very engaging. It's one of the... Not only is it frustrating because of the formatting of the book and trying to use so many bookmarks, and your book starts getting like where it doesn't want to close all the way because there's so many bookmarks in here, no matter whether they're really thin or not. But then the scenarios themselves aren't even really that interesting. There's like one scene with a robotic arm that's trying to like pull itself across the floor to get you, and that's kind of creepy. There's like things, like little references here and there to like things like the Tesla coil, you know, from Nikolai Tesla. That was kind of cool. It's kind of interesting seeing that in there. I like Nikolai. Seems like a cool guy. There was one particular thing that is helping this book tremendously, in my opinion. It isn't like a key valued thing, but to me it was so amazingly scary. One of the scariest things I've ever experienced in Goosebumps, and I'm glad it was in here because it saved the book a little bit. It's a person called the Visible Man. Not the Invisible Man, the Visible Man. And PDA, the little character that's guiding you throughout the story every once in a while when he can, when the supercomputer isn't blocking his radio talking with you, this Visible Man is something you're warned about. And when you encounter him, it very well is one of the scariest things I've ever read in any story ever. Essentially, it's just a person without any skin. And when he walks around, he makes squishing noises with his feet. It might not sound as scary the way I'm describing it to you. It might sound very silly and goofy. But in the story itself, as complicated and ridiculously complex as the formatting is in this book, and how unenjoyable a lot of it is for whatever reason, I don't know why I feel this way. The book is not that enjoyable in my opinion. That portion, trying to get away from the Visible Man, is probably one of the scariest things in Goosebumps. Ever. Easily. Ever. I would have loved to have seen that portion of this story adapted into a TV episode. It could have genuinely scared people to death. There's something about the Visible Man, just a person walking around without any skin or anything, that just horrifies me. I don't know what it is about it, just the way it's described throughout the story. R.L. Stine did a killer job with how he described this. It was just really, really, really well done in my opinion. But again, that's about it. That and the robotic arm are like the only things I really love in the story. There's some science fiction-y type stuff in there, of course, because this is a science museum. You have things like a flight simulator in the story, you have a jetpack in the story, astronaut-themed stuff. But it's all so there and gone so quick that you don't really have time to enjoy it. A lot of this is mostly going into areas and inspecting the actual rooms as much as you possibly can, getting lost in mazes on like on the second or third floor, I think is what it was. I think it was the third floor where the maze was. That was really confusing, but they had cool things like the guillotine pendulum thing that was kind of like, well, it was a pendulum, but kind of like in that Edgar Allan Poe short story, The Pit and the Pendulum. Really interested me how good parts of this could be, but they weren't either fleshed out enough because of not enough space on the pages, because of trying to make it too long, or they just weren't as well done, well executed, you know? It's a big problem with this book. I don't understand what it was about this. I guess it was the first of the special editions. They tried something new with the formatting and stuff, and it doesn't work. I'll frankly tell you up front, it does not work. It's too complicated, especially having so many bookmarks in the book itself, in my opinion. I think it's a mess. I don't like it. I genuinely do not like it. And the way this is reconstructed even, not only for the formatting of the actual book, but the way the story is told, usually when you read Give Yourself Goosebumps books, I would say if there's 20 endings, 18 of them are satisfying. Sometimes 19 and 20 of them are satisfying out of 20 endings. In a way that you can at least enjoy them, right? I don't think there was many endings at all, maybe 3 or 4 out of the entire 20 or so endings in this book that I genuinely enjoyed and thought were really fantastic and really worthwhile reading the whole book for. They were not good. And when you get the real, what I would consider official ending, I was dumbfounded by how horrible it is. The real, actual ending of the book, which you can usually tell because of how you get to that journey and what your goals are throughout the story and stuff, it is the most horrible, stupid idea that I've ever heard for a Goosebumps story or for any story otherwise, for anything. And that's coming from somebody who loves things like Tales from the Dark Side, the TV show, you know? So I know bad when I see bad. This book is bad. That ending, the official ending, I would say, is absolutely horrible. And the thing what I was trying to make the point of is that most of these Give Yourself Goosebumps books have so many fantastic endings for those books, even in one particular instance of each book. And yet in this situation, there's very few that are actually satisfying. But what you have to do in this story is that it's not like you can just end your one story here, right? Or end this story here, and that's really it, and you got a good, satisfying ending, and you could just stop reading and enjoy that one ending. It's not like that. What this book is that you have to work your way all the way down through the entire 4 floors of the building and try to get out of the front entrance. That's what your whole point is. If you mess up at all, you're dead, and you lose. And that's fine with me. It's just a matter of it's so easy to get lost in the book. It's more complicated than it needs to be. They were trying something new, so I'm fine with that. They were trying to be a little bit bold there. I'll give them their gall, you know, there and tell them they're cool. It's that it didn't do well. It's that it was too messy and it was just sloppy, in my opinion. I'm just really not happy with this book by any means. All I've said all day long, everybody I've talked to, my wife, or not my wife, my fiance, my mother, my grandfather, every single person, they'll just see me reading the book and I'm like, I don't like this book. And I kept saying that all throughout the day. I told my mom about the Visible Man thing, and she thought that was cool too, and I'm like, yeah, you would think something like that could save the book amazingly so, and that it would just keep getting better from that point onward, but no, it doesn't. I actually would have liked to have seen a book focused just on the Visible Man stalking you the entire book. I think that could have done amazingly well. But yeah, folks, there's not really anything else to say about this. This is a giant disappointment in every possible way that it could be. I've had so many good books and TV episodes I've reviewed this past week. So many of the things like the little short story from the trilogy Goosebumps things I've been talking about recently. I've had so many good home runs this week. I read Shocker on Shock Street for the first time. That was amazing. You Can't Scare Me was amazing. I read that for the first time. I've had such a good time with Goosebumps this past week, and this book, it just like broke me, because I haven't had a bad Give Yourself Goosebumps book yet. I've had like maybe 1 or 2 that were kind of not as good as the others, but the other ones were fantastic. One of my favorites so far is Little Comic Shop of Horrors. It's amazing. One of the best Goosebumps books I've ever read in my life. If you like superheroes, mainly in the Marvel area, if you like the Universal monsters, It's a great parody, and it's kind of scary when you do the Universal Monsters references and stuff. It was a fantastic book. One of my favorite series ever from Goosebumps is the Give Yourself Goosebumps books so far. But Give Yourself Goosebumps Special Edition #1 by R.L. Stine, called Into the Jaws of Doom, is one of the worst books I have read from this author, from this series, from this era of Goosebumps with the Give Yourself Goosebumps stuff. It's abysmal. I don't have words. I don't have any other way to express to you how I don't recommend this book. And if you have any other Goosebumps books that are like this, if there's any more Give Yourself books that are written like this, I wouldn't even recommend trying it, because it's going to be horrible, you're going to be disappointed. This was so unsatisfying, especially the official, like I said, the final ending bothered me so much because of how unsatisfying it was. I actually sat down and went through page by page and read every single thing that said game over that was an ending, just to make sure I didn't miss something that could have led me to the official ending. What it was is that I had gotten the official ending, and it was so horrible that I refused to believe mentally that it was the actual ending. But it was. I'm just like crushed over how bad this book is. Don't check it out. I don't recommend it by any means. If you want to collect it or whatever for your collection, have fun. I think Into the Jaws of Doom is one of the worst Give Yourself Goosebumps books written. I think it's one of the worst books, like I said, across the entire board. If I had to rate Give Yourself Goosebumps Special Edition #1 Into the Jaws of Doom on a 5-star basis, honestly, the Visible Man and the robotic arm thing are like the only things I like in the book. Even the science fiction stuff, like I said, that could have been really cool are underwhelming because they're not utilized. They don't flesh that out enough to where you can actually take it in and enjoy it, like you do with typically all Give Yourself Goosebumps books. If I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, I'd give it a 2 out of 5. I know it seems like drastically low, but I think anybody else who's a giant fan of this franchise, and this particular area of the franchise, the Give Yourself series, I think everybody would be on the same page. This is a horrible book. The Visible Man is the best thing to come out of it, because that was like, I genuinely believe that was probably the last thing added into the book to try to spice it up and actually make it good. But it doesn't save the book. It saves the interest I had for a portion of the book, but this was horrible. Don't waste your time on it. I really don't recommend it. This is one of the cheaper special editions to find right now, too, so you could find it for an easier price if you want to get it for your collection. I don't recommend it, though. I think it's a piece of crap. I'll stand by that as long as I live. This is one of the worst. Just like Nightmare on Clown Street. Anyway, 2 out of 5 stars for me. What are your thoughts on Into the Jaws of Doom if you happen to have read it? Do you love it? Do you hate it like how I do? What did you think about the Visible Man and so many of the other little cool things throughout the story? Put your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below, folks. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the channel, about the review, even though I know this review was very rambly. But you have to understand what it's like to read a book for like 3 hours. A lot of books are much longer, but I read this for like 3 hours, getting so confused and lost and stuff, like I was in my own situation in real life being lost or anything. And it was just a mess, and you have no idea what it feels like a lot of the time to just be utterly irritated with a book to the point where you don't even want to finish it. You know, it was very hard to get through this, and I'm glad I burned through it and got it over with. But man, that was a challenge, seriously. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below. Thank you for watching. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today. Goodbye.